what you shared. Let me allow to engage our lady here, because we only have one discussion. It's just to give us some insights about the book generally.
Organic economy. For me, I'm an environmentalist. So what came to my mind first was global footprint. I'm like, because it calls us to imagine an organic economy. So that is what I imagined first. I'm like, okay, so before we even think of economics, we have to see how we're going to utilize our resources. Because looking at organic economy and global footprint, because it's the ability of that given ecosystem to sustain you, and how it takes away all those wastes you're producing. And from the global perspective, everyone has their own global footprint. So how many Earths do we need to survive? Because as we think about that, we think about how we should utilize our resources, even before we think about the economy as a whole. Thinking about the economy as a whole, like as a young person, what comes to your mind when you want to start a business? You say, economics is hard. I cannot even start, because we all fear to take the risks because we do not understand the entire economic system. What comes to our mind when someone talks of economy is money, capital, things like that. But he tries to bring in the concept of, no, it is easy, because when I think of economics, I see maths and I'm like, calculations. But that is not it with the divine economic model. It tries to simplify almost everything so that you can see that, I can do something as a young economist. Looking at chapter 2, before we go into the human spirit, the law, the order, he calls for different variables that, as an economist, what should you be with every simple thing? Like for the first one, if he calls for flexibility. As economists, you have to be flexible. You have to be with courtesy, excellence, patience, assertiveness, mercy. Because all these drive you as an economist. They are the characteristics that push you to where you are. Because you can't be an economist, but you do not have qualities of an economist. You could be like, for me, I'm an economist, but you're not assertive. You cannot present yourself in a confident way. You're like, no, that one, you're out. You have to be with courtesy. You have to be with excellence. So for me, while I was looking at his model, I first left out the divine part of it. That is it. And I first looked at what he calls for as an economist. What does the model put in place for us? How do we fit in at the end of it all? Because it is not about reading and understanding. It is about reading and putting what you're reading into place. Because I'm saying like, there is patience. And each one is asserted to a certain thing. Because from the first point, because there is Cartesian one, I didn't look at that. I just looked at the 4 pillars of order, law, human spirit, and transformation. He says that to drive all that, you have to look at the latent and active entrepreneurship. All those could be there, but latent and active entrepreneurship are like the water, because he said that is like the water to drive this divine economy. So before we even put God in place, because the divine comes in chapter 3 after you understanding what you need as an economist. Then you put God in, because everything you need God, because God gives us hope to do everything, because you might be in your journey of entrepreneurship. You lose it. But what does he say? Everything needs God for you to push through everything. There is the word of God that you can look up to so that you can put these things in place.